This is Money Motivation to Mike, and I am your host, Michael Wainwright. In charge of all the controls in the mothership, Jason Wright. And hello to you, world. This is the show that will change your life. You can contact us at info@mx3.vip and find all of our content at mx3.vip or on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@mx3podcast. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notified of all of our content, which Jason puts out basically at 9 o'clock every Monday morning. Now, speaking of subscribing, Jason, apparently the viewing audience is definitely doing that, as our subscriptions on our YouTube channel has passed the 20,000 mark. And as of the recording of this show, we're at 20,599. And just in the last 28 days, we're up 8,200 subscribers. So thank you once again, viewing and listening audience. You continue to listen to our content. We continue to try to bring you something that is uplifting and important to you in your life. Maybe not as important as the next episode or the one that you previously heard, but we're here and we continue to do these things, and you continue to listen and view. So thank you very much. Now, Jason, right now, as baseball has gotten started here in April, and the NFL draft just took over, the two big topics right now is the basketball playoffs and the hockey playoffs, which are basically in their first rounds. And as we looked to see what was trending this week, National Basketball Association is the hot topic. And of course, you know, I like to talk about sports. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but I do. And today I decided to talk about the NBA, the National Basketball Association, and how it arrived, where it's at, where it's been, frankly, where it's going. But the National Basketball Association, Professional Basketball League in North America, composed of 30 teams right now, 29 in the U.S. and 1 in Canada. The league was founded in New York City. Is every league founded in New York City?
Seems like it.
It seems like it is. The league was founded in New York City on June the 6th, 1946, as the Basketball Association of America, the BAA. It changed its name to the National Basketball Association on August the 3rd, 1949, after merging with the competing league, the National Basketball League, known as the NBL. 1976, the NBA and the ABA, the American Basketball Association, merged, and they added 4 more franchises to the NBA. Now, go back and you think about watching Sports Center and going to break. After the commercials, they come back and they start talking about the association. And frankly, for a couple of years, as I grew up, I was wondering what the association was. ESPN came out in 1980 when I was 11 years old. And you've got the National Football League, Major League Baseball, National Hockey League, on and on and on. And then we got the National Basketball Association. Never know, but we're going to find out at some point why they called it an association instead of the National Basketball League. All right. I just answered that question. Yes. Okay. So we say that, but the original Basketball Association of America, they went with association. Okay. Then they merged with the National Basketball League. So, some way, somewhere, National Basketball Association arrived, and that's the way it is. We frankly don't know. Now, what's interesting here is, Jason, since 2020, NBA players are the highest paid athletes of any professional sport by average of salary per player. Now, I know there's less players in the basketball arenas than there are 53 players on a NFL team, but on the average, basketball players make more money than any other professional athletic league. What's also interesting to me is the NBA's only had 5 commissioners. 5 commissioners since 1946. That's not much turnover, meaning that when they go out and they hire a commissioner, they're here to stay. That's like from 1946 to 1963, Maurice Podoloff was the commissioner. Walter Kennedy from 63 to 75. That's 12 years, and he is the bottom, the least, held the position the least amount of time of 12 years. Larry O'Brien, which a lot of people, we actually have an award named after him. And I said Walter Kennedy. Larry O'Brien was only there from 75 to 84. He was 9 years. The big turn was David Stern from 1984 to 2014 in his 30-year reign. And going into his time as the commissioner, the league was coming out of the 1970s losing money. But there were two big names that had just came on the scene, Larry Bird and Irvin Magic Johnson. So they were fixing to make it a big-time deal, and, of course, David Stern was going to be at the head of that. Over the last 10 years, since 2014, Adam Silver's been the president, the commissioner, etc. of the league, and we'll see where that goes. As I have said before, these young folks, and we'll just say 25 and below, they don't know the golden age of when there was major dominance in the NBA. What most of these kids know is Golden State Warriors, Miami Heat, because LeBron James played for them, and then San Antonio Spurs, maybe a little bit. The Spurs weren't that flashy. A lot of people don't realize they won 5 NBA titles. And then the next name everybody's going to know is Michael Jordan, because people still wear Michael Jordan apparel and shoes to this day. So when they see the dude flying through the air, they go and do a little investigating. Hey, this guy won 6 titles. They also don't realize that his first title didn't come to 91. He entered the league in 1984, 7 years later. That's how dominant the 1980s were from those other two names that I gave a while ago, in Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, which leads us into, who did they play for? The Boston Celtics and the Los Angeles Lakers, which just happened to be tied for the most NBA championships in league history. Both franchises have won 17 NBA championships for a combined 34 NBA championships. Now, they've met several times. Lakers are struggling into this year's NBA playoffs, and frankly, by the time our episode hits the wavelengths, the Lakers probably will be eliminated. On the other hand, the Boston Celtics right now, record-wise, considered the best team in the NBA, and are striding towards winning number 18, if you will. Denver Nuggets right now are the defending champions, and maybe the Nuggets will have something to say about that if they make it all the way to the finals. Of course, our Dallas Mavericks are tied 2-2 right now with the Los Angeles Clippers, also at one time known as the San Diego Clippers, by the way. So, the National Basketball Association, like I say, founded in 1946 by owners of the major ice hockey arenas in northeastern and midwestern United States and Canada. Makes no sense. Don't have any idea how owning an ice hockey ring would turn into a basketball gymnasium where you could play professional basketball. But it's a big enough note that the NBA puts it out there for you to know how that all come about. On November the 1st, 1946, in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, the Toronto Huskies hosted the New York Knickerbockers at Maple Leafs Garden in a game the NBA now refers to as the first ever game played in NBA history. So the first ever game ever played was played in Canada. Very, very interesting. 1949, the remaining NBL teams, as the merger happened with the BAA, Basketball Association of America, now known as the NBA, in deference to merger and to avoid possible litigation, the league changed its name to the present NBA name, even though merged leagues owned all of the different governing bodies of the two. And to this day, the NBA claims the BBA's history as its own and continues to live by some of the BAA rules of the past. This new league in 1949 had 17 franchises. Today we have 30. They had 17 in 1950. They located amongst a mix of different cities, large and medium, small, as well as large arenas and smaller gymnasiums. Imagine going in and watching a game and there being 4,000 seats at the max. The NBA consolidated from 17 to 11 franchises in 1950, a process that continued until 1955 when the league reached its smallest size ever of 8 franchises. Composed of the New York Knicks, Boston Celtics, still exist where they were. Now, this is interesting. The other 6 teams are no longer located where they were in 1955 when the consolidation happened. Philadelphia Warriors, now the Golden State Warriors, who now play in San Francisco and not in Oakland. Minneapolis Lakers, now the Los Angeles Lakers, which brings me to an interesting point. I've always wondered why Los Angeles had a team called the Lakers. Lo and behold, if they weren't up there in the middle of the Great Lakes once upon a time, and that's why they're known as the Los Angeles Lakers. The Rochester Royals turned into the Kansas City Kings, which are now the Sacramento Kings. The Fort Wayne Pistons, obviously they're the Detroit Pistons. The Milwaukee Hawks, now the Atlanta Hawks. And the Syracuse Nationals, now the Philadelphia 76ers. Those were the 8 teams that were left to try to keep the league alive. And, of course, merging from 17 to 11 to 8 because of financial issues, they were able to do that and fend off. And then coming into what we call the Celtics dominance. In the 1960s, the league was dominated by the Celtics with Bill Russell and Bob Cousy and Red Auerbach. The Celtics won 8 straight NBA championships from 1959 to 1966. All right, looking back over that, the only time we had a possibility of being able to do that was those 1990 Chicago Bulls. I can't say, they won 6 out of 8, and they lost the 2 in the middle after Michael Jordan retired at the end of 1993. You can't say that they'd have won those 8 because you just don't know if that hunger had been there, where the Boston Celtics just dominated the competition. The Bulls, I mean, they had a tough time getting over the hump in the Eastern Conference, dealing with the Celtics of the 80s, then them bad boy Detroit Pistons in 89 and 90. And then they finally got over the hump there in 91 by beating the Pistons in the finals, conference finals, to get to the NBA finals. But that is the only time that anybody has ever rivaled the Boston Celtics from 1959 to 1966, winning 8 straight championships. Now, what's interesting is they did not win the title in 66-67, but regained it in 67-68 and repeated in 69. That means they dominated and won 9 of 10 championship banners of the 1960s. Incredible to me. Okay. The Chicago Packers, now the Washington Wizards, which used to be the Washington Bullets, but, you know, we had to change the name Bullet because you might shoot somebody and that might offend someone and everything else that goes along with all that BS. They became the 9th NBA team in 1961. From 1966 to 1968, the league expanded, then from 9 to 14 teams, bringing in the Chicago Bulls, the Seattle Supersonics, now the Oklahoma City Thunder, who, by the way, has the best record going into the playoffs in the Western Conference. The San Diego Rockets. Most of the stuff, all the stuff in these articles that I read and put this stuff together, I pretty well know, and I just go back and refresh my memory and my facts. I did not know the Houston Rockets used to be the San Diego Rockets. They only stayed in San Diego 4 years before moving to Houston. The Milwaukee Bucks and the Phoenix Suns, those teams still exist where they were when they came into the league in 1968. 1968 was a big year. You know why, Jason? That's the year I was born. A lot of great things in 1968, outside of Vietnam. 1967, the league had a new threat, the formation of the American Basketball Association. If you studied the league, now you got to think about it. Now the NBA is 30 plus years old. They're established. How could a league come along and put pressure on them? The league engaged in a bidding war. So what that means is when these amateur athletes coming out of college, who could afford the highest player? Fortunately for the NBA, they landed the biggest player coming out of UCLA, Lou Alcindor, better known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. However, the NBA's leading scorer, I did not know this either, Rick Barry, he jumped to the ABA because they offered him more money. The NBA also lost their best referees, their best league officials, because they were paid more money to go to the ABA. And you think about it, as we're coming in here to 1974, the ABA stood the test of time to put enough pressure on the NBA to merge with them. And one of those big reasons is because of a major player named Dr. J. Julius Erving. The first ever NBA jersey I ever had. Now, who did he play for, Jason? The Virginia Squires. His rookie basketball card is the Virginia Squires. All right. What's interesting is the Virginia Squires would play some games in Richmond, Virginia, in about a 4,500 seat arena. Then they play games in Washington, D.C., because they did not have enough attendance to go and sell out 41 games, 82 game schedule. So they rotated back and forth. Same thing with the Kansas City Kings. That's one of the reasons they ended up in Sacramento. Kansas City Kings, as we talked about, the Sacramento Kings, they played in St. Louis. They would even go up the street to the north and play in other towns to try to attract enough attendance to be able to pay their bills. The NBA grew from 9 to 18 franchises, like we talked about. And then in 1970, the Portland Trailblazers, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Buffalo Braves, now the Los Angeles Clippers, which was also at one time the San Diego Clippers, all made their debuts, expand the league to 17 teams. The New Orleans Jazz, now the Utah Jazz. Did you know that, Jason? Think about the Jazz. Mm-hmm. What would they be called the Jazz for up in the middle of Utah?
Right.
They're New Orleans. They're from New Orleans.
Makes sense.
They came aboard in 1974, bringing the total to 18 teams. Following the 1976 season, the league reached a settlement that provided for the addition of 4 ABA teams to the NBA, rising the number of franchises at this time to 22. The franchises added were the San Antonio Spurs, Denver Nuggets, Indiana Pacers, and New York Nets, now known as the Brooklyn Nets. At one time, they were also the New Jersey Nets. Very, very good stuff there. Hey, as I talked about going from 1979 through the decade of the 1980s, the big names right off the bat. Now, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was a big name in the 70s, and he had a lot to do with the 80s. But this new fresh blood, not even Kareem could carry the league and help it make money throughout that time. And that's why the emergence of 2 rookies, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, joining the Boston Celtics and the Los Angeles Lakers, was a big deal. Now, what was also a big deal is they faced off in the college basketball Division I national championship game in 1979. Played against each other. Bird played for Indiana State. Magic played for Michigan State. Michigan State won that game, and then they went on. Now, they played against each other 3 times in the 80s. 84, 85, and 87. Lakers win in 2, the Celtics win in 1. In the 10 seasons of the 1980s, the Johnson-led Lakers won 5, while the Bird-led Celtics won 3. By the way, during that time, the Lakers went to 8 of those 10 championships, the other 2 coming from the Houston Rockets, who, by the way, is the team that won the 2 championships in 94, 95, in between the Chicago Bulls, 6 out of 8 wins. Okay, now, something else happened in 1980, Jason. The league had an expansion team, better known as the Dallas Mavericks.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Bringing the total to 23. Bird won the first ever 3-point shooting competition at the NBA All-Star Game. And, of course, in February 1st, 1984, David Stern becomes the commissioner of the NBA. Now, I want you to think about this. You know what David Stern got for becoming the commissioner of the NBA? Michael Jordan. How in the world do you take the job and Michael Jordan enters the league in 1984? The interest in the league is at an all-time high. I mean, we talk about David Stern taking this league to where it was and the gazillions of dollars that it made. Well, when you can walk in with Michael Jordan, that kind of helps out along the way too. So 1988 and 89, 4 more cities gained their wishes as the Charlotte Hornets, Miami Heat, Orlando Magic, and Minnesota Timberwolves made their NBA debuts, bringing the total to 27 teams. Okay, Detroit Pistons, like I said, they won back-to-backers. And then here we go with Jordan and Scottie Pippen doing the 2 three-peats. Hey, now you know what else is interesting about that? Three-peat. Now, you go back to the 80s. The Lakers won 5 championships. They won back-to-backers there. And this will go to the 87, 88 seasons, and now they're playing the Pistons in the 89 championship series in the NBA Finals. They're about to three-peat. Pat Riley, their coach, goes out and copyrights the words three-peat, thinking the Lakers are fixing to three-peat. So if you use three-peat, you got to pay Pat Riley royalties. So I'm assuming the Chicago Bulls have paid a lot of money to the legendary Laker coach, Pat Riley. Probably so. All right. Now, as I told you, one of my favorite players, Hakeem Olajuwon, won those back-to-back titles with the Rockets. He also took the Rockets to that 86 NBA Finals when he got beat by the Celtics and Larry Bird. And then the other time that the Rockets went to the NBA Finals was in 1981 with Moses Malone, who then teamed up with Dr. J in 1983 as the Philadelphia 76ers beat the Los Angeles Lakers 4-0. A very, very interesting thing along the way, as in 1992, the Olympics started allowing professional athletes to play. And the greatest team in the history of basketball was assembled, the 1992 Olympic Basketball Dream Team. First team ever to have NBA players. Now, I want you to think about this. You can start your team out with Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, David Robinson, Patrick Ewing, Scottie Pippen, Clyde Drexler, Karl Malone, John Stockton, Chris Mullin, Charles Barkley, and they did have one amateur athlete, Christian Laettner, who, in essence, was coming off of winning the college basketball championship because he played for Duke. Who do you tell to sit on the bench? You know, they basically, as the story goes, now, Jordan's going to start, but they basically, towards this thing, they blew people out 20, 30, 40 points a game. They would draw to see who was going to start the game. That's how they made up the lineup. Chuck Daly was the coach, and he coached the 89-90 Pistons to those 2 championships. Probably the easiest coaching job he's ever done in his life.
Sure.
His biggest deal was trying to keep all the egos situated and how all that went down. Okay, moving on. 1995, the NBA expanded to Canada. Remember, the first ever game, 1946, played in Canada. And we are just now having the first franchises in the NBA played in Canada. The Vancouver Grizzlies and the Toronto Raptors joined the league. 1998 to 2014 was dominated by 2 teams. The Los Angeles Lakers and the San Antonio Spurs. The San Antonio Spurs, like I say, they won the championship 5 times during that time. Now, the San Antonio Spurs became the first former ABA team to win the NBA championship, which was a big step. Took almost 25 years, Jason, for that to happen. And this all happened because of the breakup of the Chicago Bulls roster in the summer of 1998 after their second three-peat. And that emerged Phil Jackson. You got to remember, Phil Jackson's won 11 world championships, 6 with the Bulls and 5 with the Lakers. And I've heard Charles Barkley, Sir Charles, talk about, they say how great that Phil Jackson is as a coach. And like he said, when you can start with Michael and Scotty and Shaq and Kobe, you're going to be pretty good too. Mm-hmm. By the way, the Lakers three-peated there in 98, 99, and 2000. And then came back and won it in 08 and 09. Pippen won, Kobe Bryant won those by himself because Shaq had moved on to Miami It was a part of that 2006 team that upset our Dallas Mavericks. Okay, moving right along here. After those Spurs won those 5, and the Lakers had won 5, you can see the dominance here of this 14-year span, 16-year span of 2 teams winning 10 of them. We're also glad to say that the Mavericks played in 2, and they won 1. And the team that beat them, the Miami Heat, they've won a couple as well. I mean, there's only a couple of teams here that won championships over that 16-year period. Not many at all. Now, 2008, which is the last time we have seen this, the highest profiled teams in NBA history, the Boston Celtics and the Los Angeles Lakers, played each other, with the Celtics winning their 17th championship. Of course, Kobe Bryant came back and won the next 2. In 2010, I mean, here's the thing, Jason. You cannot mention any sport, especially the NBA, without getting to everybody's favorite owner, Jerry Jones. 2010 NBA All-Star Game was held at Cowboys Stadium in front of the largest crowd ever to watch a basketball game. 108,713 people in attendance. Now, I've been fortunate enough to attend a couple of games at that stadium, and unfortunately, one time I had to sit in the 4th section. It's hard to see football players from the 4th section. Can you imagine watching a basketball game? And by the way, they're fixing to have a boxing match out there.
Oh, yeah.
Mike Tyson, how is he? 50-something? 56? 60? It don't matter. Yep, of course, Jerry's got to get involved. And 108,713. Cowboys average 85,000. So you got a bunch of people on the floor. They can't see either. 2014 to our present day, the Golden State Warriors, they've dominated and what they've done. Also, remember this, in the 2015-16 season, the Warriors went 73-9. That's the best regular season record in NBA history. Now, those Jordan Bulls, they went 72-10. Now, they lost 1 game during those playoffs. The 73-9 Golden State Warriors got beat by the Miami Heat in the NBA Finals and did not win the championship. So that's why you don't hear a whole lot about 73-9. See, 72-10, Jason, is better than 73-9 if you win a national championship, if you win a world championship, excuse me. 2019-2020 season was suspended indefinitely on March the 20th of 2020 due to COVID-19 pandemic. Okay. After Rudy Gobert tested positive coronavirus. I don't know if you have ever seen this, but Rudy Gobert was not taking COVID very seriously. And remember, we were all hands off, put on your mask, like wash your hands 18 times, all this. And when they started back up, Rudy Gobert was going through their, when he went into the game, he was touching the scoreboard. He was the scores table and touching their computers and rubbing it all over the basketball. And the dude comes up with COVID-19 about 3 days later. Yes, not very, very happy. Hey, the NBA Finals between the Lakers and the Heat brought only 7.14 million viewers to ABC. Lowest ever. Not only was anybody not interested, other things were going on in the world, but somehow the NBA showed up down at Disney World and played all their games down there. I don't know if you recall, there was no attendance, no people in the stands. So they had these big old huge screens behind the benches, the cameras on the other side. And they had all them people, the fans, logging in, and you could see their faces in little squares as they jumped up and down and cheered on their team. Do you remember seeing that at all?
Oh, kind of, yeah.
Exactly, kind of. That's really all it was. But the Lakers beat the Heat to win their 17th and tie the Boston Celtics for 17 titles. Now, I'm going to finish up here with a few things on these teams that I think are very intriguing. As I've said, the Minneapolis Los Angeles Lakers have won 17, and the Celtics have won 17. What's interesting is the Lakers have lost 15 championships. They've been in 32 championships. They've lost 15 championships. The only other teams to play and lose 6 championships, the Philadelphia 76ers and the New York Knicks. They've lost 6 apiece. That's 9 less than the Lakers. But the Lakers say, hey, when you go all the time, you're going to lose some. Yeah. So they've been in 32. The Celtics have won 17 and only lost 5. Those 2 teams have played in 54 championship games, championship series. The next highest win total is the Philadelphia San Francisco Golden State Warriors. They've won 7 championships. Lost 5, been to 12. All right. One of the greatest places that you could ever play a hockey game or a basketball game in the United States of America is Madison Square Garden. And the New York Knicks play there. They've won 2 championships. And they've lost 8. Yes. So on the other end of the spectrum, they've lost 6. They've lost 6. They haven't lost 8. I've already mentioned that. They played in 8. So here's another interesting fact. There are only 11 teams of the 30 that have won more than 1 championship. The Knicks, the Rockets, and the Bucks have only won 2. The Heat, the Pistons, and the 76ers have only won 3. So the 3 teams I've already mentioned, the Bulls won 6, the Michael Jordans, and the Spurs won 5. That's the only teams that have won what I would call excess championships. Everybody else is 1 or less. And there's only 11 more teams that have won 1. And there's 7 teams that have been and not won. Phoenix Suns with the worst record, they are 0-3 in the NBA Finals. There are also 5 teams that have never played in the NBA championship. The Charlotte Hornets, they were also called the Charlotte Bobcats once upon a time. The Los Angeles Clippers, which I've already said was the Buffalo Braves, and the San Diego Clippers, now the Los Angeles Clippers. The Memphis Grizzlies, remember they came in expansion, Vancouver Grizzlies. The Minnesota Timberwolves, and the New Orleans Pelicans, also known as formerly the New Orleans Hornets, and the New Orleans Oklahoma City Hornets. Do you remember that, Jason?
I do.
During Hurricane Katrina, 2005, somewhere in there?
Yeah.
They moved Oklahoma City for 2 years and coached by Byron Scott, which is the reason they went up there and they played in downtown Oklahoma City, and they put those season tickets on sale. They sold out in like 3 or 4 days, 20,000 seats. The arena in Oklahoma City holds a lot of fans. They sell out all the time. Like I say, they're the best team in the West record-wise right now going into these 2024 playoffs. So because of Hurricane Katrina, Oklahoma City has a professional basketball team because Seattle Supersonics attendance were struggling, not getting anywhere. And they then move to Oklahoma City because Oklahoma City had just shown how they could support a professional basketball team from the New Orleans Hornets coming up and playing for 2 years in Oklahoma City. And the rest is history. Aubrey McClendon, the oil tycoon, went and bought the Seattle Supersonics and went through several lawsuits along the way to get them out of Seattle because they still had a couple of years left on their stadium contracts. And most of those stadiums back in those days were owned by the cities. And the cities obviously don't want to give up that revenue and that rent that's coming in, which is a big part of their budgets. So once again, Money, Motivation, and Mike, the MX3, Jason. And today we're talking about the NBA. Continues to bring you topics that obviously are of interest to you, and we will continue to do that as long as we so can. Info at mx3.vip. We'd love to hear from you. As we have talked about in the past, our local elections all over the country, whether it's city council, whether it's school board, coming up here Matter of fact, on the taping of this show was before and whenever this particular episode airs, the elections will be over with. We'll maybe talk about some of those things next week. Jason's already given me some thoughts on some things that we need to talk about next week. And of course, that's a few days away, 7 days away. There's no telling what we might be talking about next week. Always reach us at mx3.vip and on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@mx3podcast. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notified of all of our new content, which comes out every Monday morning around 9 o'clock. So for everyone who's been a part of this one, and continue to live your life the right way.